Yes. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my BS. Welcome to my world. Welcome to the world where I ramble on about trucking, spot market, what to do, what not to do, like if I know anything, right? What do you know, Steve? You don't even own a truck anymore. Anyways, that's fine. I do see things from an aerial view, and that's kind of what I try to show you guys in my little podcast. Tiny when it comes to the YouTube thing, tiny world that we live in. Um, it is Friday, July 25th. One thing I forgot to mention on Wednesday's live feed is that my wife and I celebrated our 25th anniversary on Wednesday. And a quarter century, man. When you think about that, it makes you feel old. A quarter century. And we've known each other longer. We've known each other since early 90s. Almost fresh out of high school. Almost. Again, that close, right? So, anyways, I don't know how long this live feed will be because, it's Friday. Fridays tend to be hectic in my little world. I've already got a truck that has an issue with possible issue with their delivery because of an accident on I-94 that was basically shut down the interstate for a minute. So, that's kind of, when you book ahead a little bit, that's kind of what you have to anticipate. And so I always try to go for the open windows, where there's some forgiveness. But if this was a Walmart or a Dollar General or a Costco load, we'd be kind of screwed right now. So, always communicate with your broker when there's some issues, which this person has done, and so we'll see how today develops. And then there's always Shannon, who likes to call me on Friday and say, "Hey, I need help getting my truck out of this area or whatever." So she does a great job dispatching herself, but every now and then she'll call me because Fridays can be kind of hectic. And what I have found recently is that in the last year is that Friday afternoon, the Friday 5 o'clock shuffle doesn't seem to exist. I mean, it's like playing the bingo. It's like playing the lottery. You might find that one load that dropped off because someone had to lose their load because they got stuck on the interstate. You might be able to find that situation. But when you hit refresh on these load boards and the brokers don't communicate, it could be difficult to get to that load, let alone let it pop up. So a lot of times to save money, the shipper like, we'll ship it tomorrow, so that 3 o'clock shuffle doesn't seem to exist hardly at all. Every now and then we've gotten lucky. It's more like a 5 a.m. kind of shuffle. So all my trucks are booked for the weekend so far, knock on wood, lest things fall apart, and then we should be good to go. Which is why I've been live on Mondays, because Mondays it's tough to book ahead for Monday because no one wants to come up on the rate. I try to do as best as I can, but it's a very fluid, it's a very liquid, it's a very ever-changing process that I deal with. And luckily I stopped drinking, so if not, I'd probably be an alcoholic by now. So because sometimes that gets to you. We're going to take a look at the 1, 2, 3 low board. We'll also look at DAT in and out ratios, and that's kind of what I go by. I don't pay for the high dollar $300 a month DAT thing for all the little markets and the auto refresh and one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that the lower the level that you pay for on DAT, so like when a broker posts a load, it'll hit the more expensive subscriptions first. So that a load might have been posted 2 minutes ago, but it just hits like my board. I don't pay for the big, huge thing. I just pay for the 30-day averages. And what I've found is that the 1, 2, 3 load boards average rate, market rates, is right on par with it. If not a little bit more accurate because of the cargo chief and then the other rate check tools that it has. The toll calculator has been very valuable. I try to keep the trucks out of the toll zones so we can keep our profit margins up. But sometimes you have no choice, and so we kind of help compensate that with negotiation. I know that last Wednesday the last live feed, I kind of went off on a little tangent, and I think, and I hate listening to myself when I do that. That I haven't cut that live feed up yet to turn into shorts yet. But one of the things that gets frustrating to me, and that's what it was, that venting was out of frustration, because while I admire dedication, there's a line between dedication and honing your craft versus doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And I recognize the fact that, I asked an owner operator one time, I said, why do you do this? He called me, complained about everything. I'm like, then why are you here? Why not here at Like Trucking? He was somewhere else. But I said, then why are you doing this? Why are you in the truck? Well, I got no other options. This is all I know how to do. And I see that a lot, especially at my age, where you see these 20, 30-year truck drivers that have trouble getting out of the truck because they have no other skill sets. And face it, when you become a truck driver, your social skills go out the window. Or maybe your social skills were never there, which is why you are a truck driver, which, that was kind of my deal. I was never the guy that liked to wear a uniform. I was never the guy that, was like, rah, 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 team, whatever. And that's how a lot of companies hire these days. You become, like, if you work for Walmart, like in their store or whatever, you get entrenched in their culture. If you work for a big company like Google or Yahoo or somebody like that, you got to get entrenched in their culture. And trucking's no different. A lot of trucking companies try to promote camaraderie, but when, like, for example, when I was a company driver, I would go to the yard, and most drivers like, I hate going to the yard because I hate talking to other drivers, and I found that to be very sad. When I drove a school bus, if we'd see each other on the road, we'd wave, and the ones that had the crappy attitude didn't wave at each other. Same thing with when I was at Schneider. People, hey, orange truck, man, hey, what's up? Yeah, whatever, dude. Don't tell on me because I got a headset on. It's like one of those deals. And and those of you who have been in the game for a while know that camaraderie, the culture has changed, right? And no one's. It's hard to find somebody that's polite. It's hard to find somebody that's not looking out just for themselves. The person that won't pull up on the fuel island, the one that uses the Love's fuel island for the McDonald's drive-through, and or sitting there parked on the scales, or you're waiting on your dock. It's like, hey, when that truck pulls out, pull into dock 32, and you're waiting, and the driver obviously knows that you're waiting for that dock, and they're sitting there doing their paperwork, playing their video game, and you're just like, dude, get out of my way so I can make my delivery. And a lot of that culture has changed in trucking, and that's one of the things I don't miss about driving, is that seemed to be getting worse. So the more we can bond together, teach the new people that this is just not how it's supposed to be, but most of the time we're not teaching them to get out of the fuel island. We're just putting the camera in their face and posting it on Bonehead Truckers, and hope that you don't get shot. I mean, there was an incident there at the Pacific Pilot, those Pacific, Missouri, where someone got shot. Why? Because a lot of people park at the fuel line to get their Subway or their Taco Bell there, because there's this huge flight of steps, and parking there is not the easiest thing. So a lot of people go downstairs, and it takes a lot longer to fuel there. I always hated fueling there. And because the camaraderie is gone. Politeness is gone. Just I don't know. Anyways, so when people call me to complain, I sit there and I'm like, okay, why do you do this then? If you're broke and you got no credit and you're either homeless or almost homeless, which, there's a lot of drivers that don't have a home right now. Then why do you do this? Some people are like, well, it's the only thing I know how to do, and this is how I remain, where I don't have to have a house. Okay, but when you're forced into something, you become resentful. And I think that some of that resentfulness is what causes the stress and the people not wanting to look out for each other on the road or at the truck stops. Every man for himself, because everybody's resentful of the life that they've chosen. And I'm here to tell you that you don't have to live like that. If you're a ride or die and love trucking, it's in your blood because you're third generation, I get it, but create a circumstance that allows you to be the best that you can be. And if you feel like your company's holding you back, find a different company. If you feel like if you're in dry van and you think that you could succeed better in tanker, then do that. And I know several people that have. You are the master of your ship, not just in trucking, not just in bad weather, but you are the master of your own life. God has given you free will for a reason. Use it. Don't be miserable. Don't be a slave. And I think that the less miserable people are out on the road, I think the camaraderie and consideration, being considerate, I think that will increase. So, anyways, that's my little rant today. But I get the Wednesday's rant was frustration of seeing people miserable and not wanting to make a change. That they're still not doing their numbers to figure out that, hey, maybe you're not making any money because it could be because of the company, it could be because of the market, it could be because of circumstances, it could be because of the truck. But either way, a lot of people have their head in the sand saying, oh no, everything's fine. I brought home $500. I'm good. Not realizing that they're slowly burying themselves. And and then your health goes to crap. My dad passed away at 59. He was a truck driver for 20 years. And and as I get closer to his age of he passed, that's I think the average lifespan of a truck driver is 59, 60, something like that. So, I mean, what are you doing today? If you truly enjoy the job, then great. Make everything else better so it's not so hurtful to you, right? Don't just use just don't use blind hope and blind ambition to hope that things get better eventually. A lot of people are like, oh man, I can't wait for the market to flip. I can't wait for the market to be in our favor. I can't wait for the other side of these tariffs. I can't wait for the other side of this COVID. I can't, man, there's it's just the lights at the end of the tunnel. But what if that light is a freight train coming at you, right? So you got to deal with today. You got to deal with now. And whenever I hear a driver complain about the rates, it's like, okay, what are we going to do about that? What can we do about that? How can we run differently? And 9 times out of 10, it's attitude that keeps a person from succeeding. And so, and then yeah, people get so mad, and this is the internet world that we live in, social media world, where we got to gripe about our company on social media. And to me, that's bad business. What, if you're a company driver also, because more and more companies have social media teams to make sure that you're not bashing them, right? That's how you get fired. And it also, as if someone applies for Like Trucking and they contact me, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for your social media. Because if you sit there and you've done live streams while driving, or if you've done um you bash your company, or you bash the shippers and receivers, then okay, what's to say you won't do that when you're over here, right? If you're going to bash us, if things don't work out here, then that doesn't bode well. And so a lot of companies are tightening up, and it's just bad business. Like, it's like, when you work for like McDonald's or Burger King or something like that, they have NDAs that you got to sign. And it's going to get to the point that trucking companies are going to get like that. And most of the time, what you're going to now, if a company has treated you bad and they've ripped you off, and you explain that in a certain way, then that's understandable. But there are companies that can sue you for libel if sue you for slander if you sit there and say this is the worst company, blah blah blah. And that's the thing. If you have 30 drivers at your company and 29 of them are pretty happy, but then there's that one that's going to go on the internet and gripe and moan and complain and da 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 da. All they're doing is making themselves look bad, because obviously the other 29 drivers are fine. And that's something to consider too. So I kind of look at that like, okay, do you have a legitimate problem, or are you the problem? And so it gets frustrating when I see drivers make these mistakes, and a lot of them don't know their numbers. A lot of them are like, hey, so what do you need per day? All of it. Well, yeah, I'd like to have $2,000 a day. If I was making $2,000 a day, I'd probably still be in a truck. But we're not going to get that. So what do you need? And then we'll work on what you want. Right? It's kind of like your first car when you're 18. You get what you need first, and then you build your way into what you want. The spot market's the same way. If you're self-dispatch in the spot market, you're going to have to eat a couple of crap sandwiches to get to a situation where you can control more of your destiny, right? So, all right. So, anyways, let's go with the comments. You guys have been commenting. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, DIY brings up a good point. Hulkster is gone, so we've lost Malcolm Jamal Warner, we've lost Ozzy Osbourne, and we've lost the Hulk, and we also lost a guitar player of Golden Earring. So I mean, yeah, it's been kind of a rough week for people our age, right? And he will be in heaven because he was baptized, and man, he was working for the Lord there towards the end, so that's good. All right, let's see. David Edwards, good morning. How's your new gig going, dude? How's it going? Red Lady, good morning. Gary Cook, good morning. Thank you for your membership. I hope everyone is blessed every day. Sean says Gary O.C. Gary, I don't know if the same restaurant's there, Gary. Sean, I almost called you Gary. But I loved, to a fault, the breakfast burritos that place used to cook. I don't know if they still do. Oh wait, no, I'm thinking of Indy. Never mind. I don't think I've ever eaten at the Gary O.C. Never mind. You had to be careful of the Gary O.C. though. If you parked in a certain area, that you could get your hood taken out, just like any truck stop. George McElroy, what the truck is going on? Grin. Good morning. Gary says, congratulations. Jerome, good morning. Sterling Wheel says, good morning. Mrs. A is in the house. Morning all. I'm late. Happy Friday. I think I was still in high school when we first met. End of senior year. Okay. Yeah, because you graduated a year after me. So, yeah. So, it's been a ride. Sterling says, I'm a truck driver because I choose to ruin my life on my own terms. We are creatures of habit and stubborn to make change. That is true, CDN. And it's just kind of sad. It frustrates me sometimes. And I try not to let it get to me, but it does. Because I'm human. Trucking with T-Bone, good morning. DIY Semi says, happy morning. Bull of the Woods, what's up? Whole committee will live on. He will not be forgotten. That's true. Good morning. Cascade. Most people complain need to take inventory whether they're a victim or a volunteer. That's true. Let's see. CDN says low rates from brokers. Go direct customers. Find out you're bidding directly with customers against other carriers or brokers. What tools do you have to know how to win the bid and be profitable? That's too much work, CDN. What are you talking about? I've been getting a lot of RFP invitations. A lot of people wanting drop trailers, 500 loads for the next, X amount, months or whatever. I've been getting a lot of those. I know DIY gets a lot of those as well. So that's a positive thing. And then I'm seeing more pallet loads, which is a good thing because loads of pallets usually means that freight is getting ready to be an uptick. Now, with that being said, Christmas freight is starting to move in August. And we've only got like just a few days left of July. So Christmas freight is moving now. Now, in the reefer, it'll be delayed a little bit, but like the frozen stuff's probably moving now. They are preparing. And every year since I've been driving, it gets earlier and earlier and earlier on the Christmas freight to prevent those spikes. So they're not paying extraordinary prices in, last week of October, early November. I mean, you see, like you go to Walmart on New Year's Day and Easter stuff is already out. I mean, that's how far ahead they think about this stuff. So just kind of keep that in mind. There's probably Christmas decorations going up right now somewhere in some store. So Mrs. A sets an excellent point. Most of the time I am the problem, not the other person employer. That's true. But self-accountability is difficult. Oh, yeah, Chuck Mangone, I forget, I can't pronounce his name. Mangone also passed. Yeah, I saw that too. I need a slaw burger, fries, and a bottle of skeet. From a 10,000 perspective of trucking over the past 10 years, brokers invested in technology and customer development. Most carriers have not adapted as quick current situation. I agree with that. I had a driver call me and she was like, I'm over it. I need you to dispatch me. She talked to an AI person. It was just frustrating. And an AI bot. I shouldn't call it a person. All hail the mighty AI. Okay. But anyways, sorry. I blacked out there for a second. The technology is intimidating. And the last 6 months, I've really kind of tried to learn, right? Like, I know that if a broker's load board that uses bots has a load posted for 1,500, I know that they will do the digital version of hanging up and laughing at you if I put in a rate for 2,000, especially if the market rate is like 1,600. And it's interesting to see, like one broker will be about 10 to 15% below the averages. Another broker will be right at the averages, and another one will actually be a little bit higher than what the averages are going for. Now, one of the things that I also keep an eye on is like Georgia. We've been keeping an eye on the Georgia market for quite a while, and we're going to look at it today. There was a time where there was 5,000 outbound loads on the DAT board in Georgia. 123 was showing a big number as well. And I thought to look there because now they weren't paying as much to go from Ohio to Atlanta. Wonder why. And now that Georgia volumes are back down, they're not going to pay as much to go from Atlanta to Ohio. And so it's like playing whack-a-mole. It's like trying to remove the air bubbles of a sticker you're putting on your truck, right? It's like one pops up, you get rid of one, it pops up somewhere else. Now, the really expensive DAT package gives you the markets, not just the states. So you take a state like Texas, Dallas might be red, but Houston might be blue, right? In other words, there's not a whole lot of freight coming out of Houston, but there is in Dallas. Whereas, you can't just look at Texas and go, oh, there's 4,000 loads coming out of Texas. Well, where are they coming out of? And so I have the time and the resources to do that kind of research. And what I found is that I see things before they're announced. The people that make money on the stock market, that's what they do. They can kind of see these things before they happen, and they're able to make money that way. And so I try to do the same thing. I try to be proactive in dispatch, not reactive. And I fail. I fail a lot. I had a truck in Nevada and I was pulling my hair out. I was like, dude, this sucks. And this one particular driver, that we were trying to run out west, and I was constantly being reactive. And so when I see someone, like when we get a new driver and they're fresh to self-dispatch or whatever, the first thing they do is chase the money. Oh man, there's a load going to Montana for $4 a mile. Man, not realizing that they're going to have to deadhead probably 800 miles just to get out of there. They're chasing the money. And it's tempting to chase the money. Oh man, I'm going to go take that load for $3,000 in Miami. As long as you know what you're getting into, you can recover. But if you get to Miami and think, what do I do? And it takes time. It takes a little bit of being open to wisdom to learn how to navigate that. And so now instead of going, oh, I'm going to take this, load to Miami, I'm going to be like, well, if I go to Miami, I better have a strategy to come out. So I'm not going to take this load until I can figure out a strategy how to get out. And that's important. And that's one of the blessings that I have by not having to drive a truck now, is that I'm able to do that. Whereas when I was driving my own truck, I just stayed in the areas where I know I can get a load out. So I never went to Phoenix. I never went to Miami. I never went to Montana. Now, Landstar was a different situation. I ended up going from Laredo to Boise. That was a good paying load. But then I ended up deadheading 300 miles to pick up chips out of Utah, took that to Arizona. And then from Arizona, I deadheaded to Tucson, and then Tucson to the Midwest. So, I mean, why do I remember that? Because it was a very stressful time, because I found myself in an area that I wasn't used to because I chased the money, right? Moving Christmas freight earlier means flatter rate cycles. Yes. And I mentioned that on Wednesday. They want to kind of do away with the spikes, right? I am not the problem. I am the Eggman. I am the walrus. Hobby Lobby has had Christmas stuff out for a week or two, but craft stuff is a little different. Yes. Put a 6 in the chat if you have a written plan for Q4 of 2025. Put a 7 if you only think about your business week to week. 7, 8, 7 because we have no idea what freight will be available or where it is a month away. By the time you get the deadhead, it's under 2 to go to Montana, right? Fafo, Montana. That's true. And that's the thing, right? And so that's why And Cascade brings up a good point. A lot of times when I first start dispatching a driver, sometimes we'll go through that period, right? And I'll let them go through it. I had this driver that like, hey, we're looking at the load board together. It's like, so I was like, okay, well, here's this for, we were in, I forget what, we were not in a great area, but here's this paying this much going to Montana. I said, yeah, but you need to be home by Friday. And you're not going to find a load out of there. Oh man, no, book me this Montana load. I'm like, okay. Because he didn't want to do the $1.60 coming out. I think we were in Denver. So he's sitting in the dock, almost empty. I'm like, dude, go home. That's like over 800 miles. I'm like, or wherever many it was. I'm like, yeah, so let's do the math real quick. So instead of this load and this load that I wanted to put you, we would have made X amount. And instead, you chose this load. And at the end of the day, you're running for about 90 cents a mile. Oh, that's not good, is it? No. To avoid the $1.80, now you're running for 90 cents. Because you forcibly landed in an area where you knew you couldn't get home, where I knew you couldn't get home. After that, they started trusting me a little bit more. And that's why it's important to know your numbers, because you're like, oh, dude, I got $4 a mile to go to Montana, man. I'm good to go. Yeah, but you had to deadhead 500 miles just to get out of there for $1.20 a load after that, and oh no, I made $4 a mile. It's cool, and look, it's in our nature, right? And watching so many people struggle with that, I try to avoid that. So my main lane was Missouri to Ohio or Missouri to Southeast and back. Every now and then I flirt with Michigan or flirt with Wisconsin, but I was primarily Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Georgia, sometimes Florida, northern Florida. And then, but primarily, from I-77 to I-35, I did utilize Texas a lot because Texas market was a lot different back then. It was good going in, tough coming out. And I was willing to take that because I had a strategy for that. Go to Dallas. Sometimes you can go to Oklahoma and make just as much money as you coming out of Dallas. So, David Edwards says 6 company driver. Counting 5, 6, 7, 8 activates my Laverne Shirley. Well, you are in Wisconsin, so. See, my point is having a TMS to enter your loads allows you to look back at quarter 2024. Did you use 20 different brokers or under 5? Reach out to those who gave you 80% of freight. Staff may have changed, and that's what I try to do. Like, people have criticized me openly on YouTube about how Steve just uses the same brokers over and over. He's not a dispatcher. I'm like, no, I'm utilizing my relationships. Because when you're dispatching 6 to 8 trucks, you think I'm going to make 30 phone calls off the DAT board with these brokers that don't want to communicate for every single truck, for every single load? No. The smart brokers go, how many trucks you have and where are they at? Let me be your dude or dudette, right? And I'm like, okay. So there you go. Ensure you're current with that broker. Start now and see if any freight from quarter 2024 would be repeated. It's process, customer development. Now, what CDM brings up just entered my head. Some stuff is seasonal. So like water ships pretty hot and heavy this time of year, obvious reasons, right? Football season starts, the beverages start, both carbolicious and alcoholicious, right? So recognizing cycles. Reefer people are used to doing that because they got to deal with produce, and then certain times of the year the meat packing plants will do the frozen thing, and then there's always a season for everything. Like, there's a shipper not too far from me that ships plastic flowers for Memorial Day. And so I know that starting in February, I start looking for those loads because that's the only shipper in that town. And it's not a yearly thing. So when I see those loads pop, I'm like, there it is. And the smart trucking companies around here, they try to get their hands on that before it has to hit the spot market. And I haven't seen those loads in quite a while, to be honest with you. So recognizing seasons is important because trucking is a seasonal job. You know, I found myself running, even as a company driver, you'll find yourself running a certain area more than another area in certain times of the year. So when Christmas retail freight starts moving, that's when you start seeing the Midwest wake up a little bit. And, you know, depending on, you know, Halloween stuff is like, that's all port stuff. That's all Chinese stuff. And so a lot of that stuff comes out probably on a train out of California. So, I mean, you know, I'm sure the drayage guys will tell you that there's a seasonal fluid to it. And then add the tariffs and all the complications, you know, and we're dealing with a turbulent time, but this is the nature of the spot market. And so to deal with fluid, you have to be fluid, right? Shannon with her cheerful AI self. Woohoo, good morning, everyone. This is A saying hi to Shannon. So these are my thoughts. And since I have this microphone, I'm gonna put them out there out loud. So all right, so let's take a look at some load availability stuff, and we'll see where the freight's at, and we'll see where the rates are at. Maybe not. So let's see, share screen. There we go. Mike Nine Toes, I wish all brokers could be like you, CDN. That's true. He is an anomaly. But, you know, you want to do one of CDN's load, he expects the same thing in return. He wants ETAs, he wants updates, he wants professionalism. So Shannon says, I'm heading home for the weekend, delivering in the morning to Lansing. Good deal. Good deal. All right, let's take a look. Let's put this on van. By default, it goes to all the trucks. Let's look at van here. Look at the West. Oh, look at Arizona's green now. It was yellow for a while. And Colorado's green. Now, I will say this, just because it's green, you know, in the DAT it's red, just because it shows a hot market doesn't mean that you're going to get $4 a mile out of these places. It just means that you're going to you can make 20 phone calls instead of just 5, right? But know your worth, know your numbers. And there's 3 levels. You get what you can, you get what you need, or you get what you want. If you're in Montana, 30 outbound loads. You're going to get what you can. Arizona, you might get what you need. Ohio, you might get what you want. Unless what you want is unrealistic, which, you know, that's a common problem as well. Yes, we all deserve $5 a mile on everything on long miles because, you know, of the truck stops and the truck repairs and the, you know, threat of life and limb and, you know, being away from your family and sleeping in a truck and letting your health go to crap. Yes, we all deserve $5 a mile. However, they're not going to pay that. So let's move on from that and let's see what we can get. Right? And so that's an important mindset that a lot of people struggle with. And we do. I do. I've lost loads over $20, $30 just trying to squeeze it a little bit more. Yeah, let me see if I can get let me see if I can get, approval for that. Oh, the load's gone. Sorry. Someone just took it. Why did they take it so fast? Because they needed to go. They needed to book a load. They don't know their numbers. Or they're willing to underbid you so they can keep their truck moving because they know a sitting truck does not make money. Right? Now, with that being said, there's people in my life that have said, "This is all I got. I can't get out of the truck." Okay, if this is your only option, do the best that you possibly can if this is literally your only option. Been driving for 30 years? There should be no reason why you're struggling right now. I guarantee if you talk to a 30-year veteran stockbroker, they're probably not living in the poorhouse. If you talk to a 30-year doctor, he's probably doing pretty good for himself. Or a 30-year lawyer. If you go to a lawyer, you go see a lawyer, and one guy's been around for a year, and then the other person's been around for 30 years, who are you going to trust more? Right? And so obviously the 30-year guy is probably going to cost a little bit more, but he's going to give you higher service. Are you giving yourself higher service by being a 20, 30-year veteran of trucking? As a welder, I was a welder, and all the veteran welders told me this: do it for 10 years and find something else to do. Either become a foreman, either get into management, still work in your field, but to sit there and breathe those fumes for 10 years, it's going to kill your body. Work your way up. Yes, I enjoyed welding, but I also knew that it wasn't great for my health. I enjoyed trucking, but I also knew that at home I was needed. And so I made a 5-year plan to get out of the truck. And now I'm not telling everybody to quit. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if you feel that you deserve more, if you feel that you deserve better, then act like it and put yourself in a position where you can do better. And if you sit there and say, well, my company won't let me do better, then is it the company or is it you? And that's the harsh truth I'm here to tell you. That's why I only get 35, 40 people in here, because people don't like to hear the truth. And every single day I deal with people that are avoiding the truth. If you feel that you deserve better, then be better. In other words, if I call CDN and say, hey, dude, I see you got a load from Pennsylvania to Missouri. And he goes, well, okay, it's paying $2.25 a mile. But I go, but I deserve $3 a mile. The first question that CDN's going to ask me is, why? Why do you deserve $3 a mile to go from Pennsylvania to Missouri? And then it's up to me to go, well, because it's hard being a truck driver, and repairs cost money, and there's like $4,000 in tolls that I got to deal with, and 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 but if I can go up to CDN and say, well, my profit margin is this, my and I wouldn't come to him for $3 a mile going from, say Carlisle to Missouri, because I know that that's not what that market pays. Do I deserve more? Yeah, but if I'm trying to squeeze more, then I have to tell him why, or I should tell him why. Now, I could tell him the whole world. I could tell him, okay, I can give him an itemized list of my deductions, of my cost, right, from that load. But if his shipper's not willing to pay, then he's not going to give me $3 a mile to go from Carlisle to Springfield. And then on top of that, the shipper goes, man, that guy's kind of a butthead to expect $3 a mile in a $1.80 mile market. They don't see the pictures of my truck. They don't see how polished my W9 or Peterbilt 389 is. They don't see that duct tape together truck that hasn't been DOT'd in like 2 years. We'll take that for $1.60. Does that driver deserve that load? No. Is he going to give the best customer service? No. And so there's a balance between what you want, what you need, and what you can get. All right, CDN, I need $2 a mile out of this. Well, the shipper's only willing to pay, $1.89. And then I look at the rest of the market. I don't think I can do better than that. So I grab that load and I show CDN the best customer service I could possibly do, so I can prove to them that even though I've asked for $3 a mile and I'm not getting it, I'm going to give them customer service like I was. There was a Facebook post I saw a while back in Rate Per Mile Masters where someone said, "Yeah, I took that low paying low, but I'm not doing check calls. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. The broker can go screw itself, blah, 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 blah." I thought, and everybody jumped on him, which was refreshing. Because imagine, like, we just had our carport rebuilt, because of the storm. And imagine if I tell the person, "Hey, this is all I can pay for this." He was like, "Okay, we'll do it, but we're not going to use the right nails. We're going to do a crappy job. We're not going to give you any kind of customer service." Would I use that contractor again? No. You want the person to come back. You want that you want the carport people to go, "Hey, you know what? We hear you, and we'll do our best." And that's a lost art. Negotiation is a lost art. Knowing how much leverage you have in a negotiation is a lost art. DIY and I did a book report on Chris Moss's book about negotiation. Look it up. And it's helped me tremendously. But knowing your leverage, there's no way that I would even ask for $3. Now, if would I ask for $3 out of Carlisle to go back to Springfield? Under certain circumstances, yes. Like if it was a 20-stop load, then yes, I could justify asking for that money because that's a lot more work. If I can offer something that the 20 other trucks that are empty at the truck stop can offer, then I have a little bit more leverage. And so, you give good customer service. That's what gets you emails and phone calls of people looking for you to move their freight instead of the other way around. DIY and Come On With It is trying to get Shan to move to Wisconsin. It's been hard. Expenses have went up steadily for years, but rates keep going down or staying at $2 a mile makes life hard to manage and almost impossible to form home life. Mike, I get you. And that's one of the biggest struggles right now. And so I know that there are a lot of things that are outside of our control. And so I have, and I kind of have to remind brokers of that every now and then. The ones that I have relationships with. It's like, why you got to be at this number? I'm like, Arrive used to be very proactive. Arrive Logistics they used to call me all the time, a different agent every single time. And they're like, "Oh, we noticed that you haven't used us in quite a while." And for the record, I do use them quite a bit now. But there was a time where I didn't, and a lot of it was a credit issue. But they've resolved it. We've resolved it, so everything's good with them. But they would they have people in their office that like, okay, let's go off the carriers that used to use this a lot but aren't now. Let's see what's going on. And 9 times out of 10, I go over the expenses of what it costs to run a truck, and they're like, oh, I did not know that. Yeah, so every load that you have posted under X amount is a losing number for an owner operator. Man, I had no idea. And then they kind of like rethink their life choices. They don't call me as much now. But I do have an open communication line with a broker that I've utilized quite a bit. And because he was willing to listen and understand. You know, some brokers are like, oh, sucks to be you. This is what it's paying. Like, well, this is why you're constantly looking for a carrier. And this is why your contracts go bad, because you're paying, you're not educating the shipper on paying a rate that's sustainable by a trucking business. And we're seeing it all the time. Contract rates can kill a trucking company. Right? Quick hit, good morning. Got to go load later. Have a blessed day. Thank you, Cascade. If you're an owner operator chasing money to run the country, well, the rates do what they do. If you have patience to stay in the same lane to understand the players where they fit in the supply chain. Everybody's saying hi to Quick. I got out of general freight. I haul customer stuff now. Good. If that customer's secure, you're good to go, man. You can make an educated decision after 3 or 4 months in a single triangle area, or to stay and find a new triangle. Steve, how long should an owner operator stay in a triangle to know if it's good or bad? I give it about 2 weeks, depending on where it's at. And if they can afford the learning curve, that's the thing. If you need to make $800 a day regardless with no mistakes, then you better find it quick. But someone who might have a paid off truck with low bills at home, they can afford a little bit more of a curve. You know, the learning curve. So it just depends. And it also depends on where they live. Where you live is very important. The driver in North Dakota, like Cascade, is going to have a way different strategy than the guy that lives in Columbus, Ohio, or the guy that lives in Atlanta. All of our Georgia drivers are doing very well here. They have figured it out. Mike says, I'm an owner operator. My carrier has virtually lost our direct customer whom we have and still do bend over backwards for and hit the pocketbook hard. Yes, it's tough. The truth is not well received. I know, DIY. Relationship with a new customer, but the pay isn't that great. Also extremely heavy. Yeah, so less profit margin, right? The rate is in direct proportion to supply and demand. The beauty of a free market system. That is true. And it keeps us locked to a certain area to be able to please and meet the needs of a new customer. Right. Because you got to worry about backhauls, right? Excellence in customer service in every department of your life brings great and fruitful relationships. Probably when I can buy the farmland. To a carrier's defense, many brokers have added so many barriers to be able to negotiate. Private load boards that are click and go only, email only communication, AI screening, hard in 2025 to go up rate. Yes, because the computer will shut you down quicker than anything. At least a person on the phone, you're like, well, dude, I kind of need $2,000 for this. Oh, I don't know. You go back and forth and you explain why, and you can press them with all, words, and, I can give you a tracking link, AI is like, this is the rate, take it or leave it. And then a year later, the broker's like, why are we having trouble moving freight? Because the computers do not negotiate. They're told, only go up $100 on this, and only if the carrier's got a good score. And that's it. That's your negotiation. It's more black and white. Ask Jeff, it costs your carrier to use 100 different brokers versus, yeah, I mean, you got to deal with RMIS, you got to deal with Highway, you got to deal with My Carrier Packet, you got to deal with, vetting, you got to deal with all that. What's this Amazon link? Oh, thank you. That's my Amazon link. Chris Voss never split the difference as the book he mentioned. Thank you, Mrs. A. Look at her be on it. So anyways, let's go back to the freight. Whoa. All right. So let's take a look at what's coming out of. Let's do an area that I know, right? Mike says, I have a pretty low overhead, about $2K a month, home and business. But if anything major happens, like my home AC going out, $5K to replace, and I can't afford to fix. That is a scary place to be. And so that also adds to the stress of being out on the road and dealing with the inconsiderate drivers that won't won't pull up at the fuel island and because they're getting too cheap, Big Macs that aren't good for them. And that adds to it, right? And so, but you're in a situation where you don't have control. You're in a situation where you're dealing with direct customers, and that's part of the struggle. So how can we change that? And that's where the research needs to go, right? How can I change this situation that I'm in? And it's good that you have low overhead because that's what's allowed you to survive thus far. But what can we do to get more? What can we do to get better? And if you find that you're, and as most contract freight is, you find that you're at the mercy of that company. And so the market could be hopping. We could all be making $5 a mile right now in the spot market, but you don't have control because you don't have access to that, right? But you're also doing good when everybody else is maybe making $1.60 a mile. But are you truly in control? Would you be better off if you were more in control? That's the other thing. A lot of people, they can't handle that kind of freedom, right? There's a lot of people that enter the spot market. I'm like, all right, I can dispatch myself. I'm going to do one load a week, and then that's it because I want to stay home. I'm guilty of that. I'm speaking from experience. And what happens? That repair comes along and you can't afford it. Right? Now, Mike says he's thinking about going out on his own. So you got to weigh those options as well. What does that look like? And I'm telling you right now, having your own authority in this day and age as a single truck operator, it is difficult. Extremely difficult because you're limited, again, you're limited on the brokers. You got to start from the bottom and work your way up. We have a few people here at Like Trucking that had their own authority, tried to do some contract stuff, got bit, but instead of getting their own authority again, they came to us and they're actually doing pretty good because they're not worried about all the external stuff that a carrier has to worry about. And so there's a strategy there as well. How much control do you actually have? And what can you get? In today's day and age of theft and freight fraud and everything else, it's becoming more and more difficult. So you might call a CH rep with your new authority and say, okay, you're my dispatcher now. Let's go. You have a little bit more freedom than what you're doing now, but you're still confined to one thing. It's a good strategy at first, but can you live with that? Can you afford that? And then, you want to do that with one of the biggest brokerages in the world because now you have access to a lot of freight. Or maybe you find that mom and pop broker that has steady freight for like a local shipper. And you could be their main person that allows them leverage to negotiate more. You could be that person as well. So it was extremely beneficial last few years with the other customer. Yep. Arizona says it's looking rough out there. It is. It is. And and here's the thing. The post-COVID rates was only like about a year and a half, 2 years, and people still went out of business during that. And so and all it did was like, yeah, we all got better rates, but then that's when everything else went through the roof as well. The cost of repairs and all that, and tolls and fuel. And so it's always been rough. It's like going into the ocean. Yes, you will have calm seas, but that won't make you a good sailor, right? The rough waters is the nature of the ocean, and that's how it is in the spot market. This is the nature of this machine. You should always look at it. It's always rough out here, always. And so you prepare yourself as a warrior. Okay, man, it's rough. Let's go. Let's build this head on. Let's not complain. Let's not make stupid mistakes. Let's not waste our money on things that we don't need. Because it's only the strong that survive, or the smart. The ones that know the loopholes, that know the ones that know how to get around things, the ones that know how to negotiate and socialize. That's how you navigate the spot market, or any market, whether it's contract or what. Financial guy, like always says, not having an emergency fund is an emergency. That's true. The barrier with owner operators is the truck sits when driver is off. I know everyone here will say no way another driver will drive my truck. Business would say to utilize the revenue tool. We ran the numbers on everything. It puts us about 20 cents a mile ahead, hauling mostly $2 a mile average, $1.60 after carry, $1.38 after carrying fuel. So essentially what you're saying is you're a company driver for 20 cents a mile, is what that tells me. Now dude, it's so refreshing to see that you know your numbers. But can your business survive off of 20 cents a mile? Can you pay your home bills? Now, you said that your bills are low, which is good. But so if I'm going to work for 20 cents a mile, I want to be able to be building something. If you watch Shark Tank at all, the people that sacrifice for years, they tend to do better because they're taking a hit for a while. And if they make smart moves, they get something. But if it's just sacrifice after sacrifice after sacrifice, and nothing is ever gained because it's a crappy idea, then what happens? It dies, and then you lose everything. Which, I admire the spirit. It's all or nothing, but have you really had nothing? And the billionaires at Shark Tank won't tell you that. They'll tell you when to cut it loose. Here, let me answer this text here. All right, so as perfect Friday fashion, I got to go. Let's see. So, anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to my nonsense. If you don't mind, click the like, and if you want to try out the 123 low board, which I didn't really show off too much today, 48065. You try it for 30 days for free. Have the tools at your disposal so you can do better than the guy that's in the duct tape truck next to you with the paper sign, and that's gonna underbid you. Have the tools at hand to make sure that you can do well. Thanks for watching. I hope you've had a good week. I hope you have a good weekend. And with that being said, strength for today, over tomorrow. Peace. After I put up my awesome song to see you guys out. Peace.